My name is Rachel Thompson. I'm 42 years old, and this is the story of how my sister learned the most valuable lesson of her life. Have you ever been looked down on by your own family for the life choices you've made? If so, this story is for you. For 15 years, my sister couldn't stop reminding everyone that I'd wasted my MBA to become a farmer's wife. But at my daughter's wedding, in front of 200 guests, a truth emerged that silenced her forever. Before I continue, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. It all started 3 months before my daughter Emma's wedding. David and I were in our kitchen, going over the guest list one more time when my phone buzzed. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. "Can't wait for the wedding," her text read. "I have a special surprise planned for Emma." My stomach tightened. Victoria's surprises were never just surprises. The morning of Emma's wedding arrived with perfect Oregon sunshine streaming through the vineyard's oak trees. Our venue, Willow Creek Vineyard, looked stunning with its rolling hills and neat rows of grapevines stretching toward Mount Hood in the distance. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, lavender bouquets marking each aisle, everything exactly as Emma had dreamed. David squeezed my hand as we did our final walkthrough. "Stop worrying about Victoria," he said, reading my mind as always. "This is Emma's day." But at 2 p.m., an hour before the ceremony, Victoria's Tesla pulled up the gravel drive. She stepped out in a designer dress that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage, her husband Robert trailing behind, looking uncomfortable in his tailored suit. "Rachel!" Victoria air-kissed me, her perfume overwhelming. "Oh my, how rustic. I suppose this is charming in its own way." She glanced at the barn where the reception would be held. "Very authentic. Very you." I forced a smile. "Emma loves it here." "Of course she does, sweetie. She grew up with simple tastes." Victoria's eyes swept over my dress, a elegant but modest navy blue number I'd found at Nordstrom Rack. "Is that what you're wearing?" Before I could respond, she turned to the wedding coordinator. "I need to speak with whoever's handling the speeches. I have something special planned for my niece." The coordinator looked at me questioningly. I nodded, though my chest tightened. Victoria pulled out an envelope from her purse, thick and cream-colored. "This is part 1 of my gift," she said, waving it mysteriously. "Part 2 comes during my toast." I didn't know then that her gift would change everything. As guests began arriving, Victoria positioned herself near the entrance like an unofficial greeter, making sure everyone noticed her. "Yes, I flew in from San Francisco," I heard her tell Emma's college roommate. "Had to push back a board meeting, but family comes first, doesn't it?" She intercepted our neighbors, the Johnsons. "Oh, you know Rachel from the farmer's market? How quaint. I keep telling her she could do so much more with that MBA. But some people prefer the simple life." David's jaw clenched as he adjusted his tie, the one Emma had given him that said "Father of the Bride" in small letters. His hands, permanently etched with soil lines despite scrubbing, trembled slightly. "Let it go," I whispered. "She's doing it again," he muttered, "making this about her." The MC, a young man named Tyler, approached us looking flustered. "Mrs. Thompson, your sister insists on giving a special toast. She says she's cleared it with you?" I hadn't, but Victoria was already beside us. "Of course it's cleared. I'm the bride's only aunt. I've prepared something inspirational for Emma." She handed Tyler a note card. "Make sure you introduce me properly. Victoria Mitchell, Senior Marketing Director at Technova Industries." Tyler glanced at me. The ceremony would start in 20 minutes. 200 guests were taking their seats. My father, 73 and recovering from hip surgery, was being helped to his chair by my mother. This wasn't the time for a confrontation. "Fine," I said quietly. "But keep it brief, Victoria." She patted my shoulder condescendingly. "Don't worry, sister. I know exactly what needs to be said." The way she emphasized "exactly" made my blood run cold. The ceremony was beautiful. Emma glowed as she walked down the aisle, her white dress catching the afternoon light. Her new husband, Marcus, teared up when she reached the altar. Even Victoria seemed moved, dabbing her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. But during the reception, as guests enjoyed their farm-to-table dinner, Tyler tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we hear from the best man and maid of honor, the bride's aunt has requested to share some words. Please welcome Victoria Mitchell, Senior Marketing Director at Technova Industries." Victoria stood, smoothing her dress. The spotlight found her immediately. She'd positioned herself at the head table where everyone could see her. "Thank you, Tyler." She smiled, diamond earrings catching the light. "You know, watching Emma today reminds me of watching her mother at her wedding 20 years ago." A few guests smiled. This seemed harmless enough. Rachel was so young then, so full of potential. Victoria's voice carried perfectly through the speakers. Fresh out of Northwestern with her MBA, the world at her feet. We all had such high hopes. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. David's hand found mine under the table. Victoria wasn't done. As Victoria continued her speech, my mind flashed back through 15 years of moments just like this. Christmas 2010. "An MBA from Northwestern and you're doing bookkeeping for vegetables?" She'd laughed, wine glass in hand, while our extended family listened uncomfortably. Thanksgiving 2015. "I just closed a $1 million campaign," she announced, then turned to me. "Rachel, are you still counting carrots?" When I explained we'd just landed a contract with Whole Foods, she waved dismissively. "How nice. Local grocery stores need suppliers too, I suppose." Emma's high school graduation. "Maybe Emma should spend a summer with me in San Francisco," Victoria suggested loudly. "Show her there's more to life than dirt and farmers markets. No offense, David, but she needs to see successful people." David never responded to her barbs. His success spoke quietly. The third-generation farm he'd modernized, the sustainable practices he'd pioneered, the employees he treated like family. But Victoria only saw dirt under his fingernails. The worst was when she'd visited, once, 5 years ago. She'd stood in our doorway, refusing to come inside. "I'm allergic to all this," she gestured vaguely. "The smell, the dust. How do you live like this, Rachel? You had such potential." Her own children, whenever we saw them at family gatherings, would wrinkle their noses when Emma hugged them. "Mom says you smell like farm," her daughter had once announced. Victoria hadn't corrected her. Each slight had been small enough to seem petty if I complained, but together they'd worn grooves in my heart. My parents noticed but said nothing. Victoria had always been the golden child, the one who'd made it. Now, standing before 200 guests at my daughter's wedding, Victoria was doing it again. But this time something felt different. David's calm beside me wasn't resignation, it was anticipation. "Patience," he'd always said. "Success doesn't need to announce itself." I thought he meant it philosophically. I didn't know he meant it literally. Not until Tyler started checking his phone repeatedly, glancing toward the entrance with increasing frequency. Something was about to happen. Victoria's speech continued, each word carefully chosen to wound while maintaining plausible deniability. When Rachel told me she was marrying a farmer, Victoria paused for effect. "I thought it was a phase. You know, some women go through that back-to-nature thing." Several guests shifted uncomfortably. But 20 years later, here she is, still persevering. The first sign of her contempt was always the refusal to visit. In 15 years, Victoria had come to our farm exactly once. She'd lasted 10 minutes before claiming allergies and waiting in her car. When Emma had won her 4-H championship at 16, a huge honor in our community, Victoria had declined the celebration. "I don't do barns," she'd texted. "Send pictures." Send? But it wasn't just the absence, it was the active dismissal. When Emma had posted about her acceptance to UC Davis's agricultural business program, Victoria had commented publicly, "Well, I suppose someone has to do it. Thank goodness my kids aim higher." The second sign was how she'd poisoned her children against us. Last Christmas, Her son had refused to eat our contribution to dinner, organic roasted vegetables from our farm. Mom says we don't know what's really in organic food, he'd announced. She says it's just marketing for people who can't afford real quality. Her daughter had been worse. At our father's 70th birthday, she'd loudly asked Emma, "Don't you want to do something important with your life? My mom says your mom wasted her education. You don't want to end up like that, do you?" Emma had cried the whole drive home. Now Victoria was building to something, her voice rising with false concern. "I just hope Emma remembers that she doesn't have to limit herself. That just because her mother chose to—" She paused, searching for words. "Step back from ambition doesn't mean she has to." Marcus's parents exchanged glances. His mother, a federal judge, raised an eyebrow. His father, a pediatric surgeon, set down his wineglass rather firmly. David remained perfectly still, but I noticed him check his phone. A small smile played at his lips. "Almost time," he whispered. "Time for what?" If I stayed silent now, the damage would ripple far beyond this moment. Emma's shoulders were already hunching inward, that same defensive posture she'd developed in high school when Victoria's comments had filtered through the family. She'd started lying about what her parents did, telling friends her dad was in agricultural management instead of proudly saying he was a farmer. Marcus kept glancing at her with concern. They'd fought about this before. Emma's shame about our life, her constant need to prove she was more than just a farm girl. It had taken 2 years of therapy for her to work through it, to stand tall when she talked about joining the family business after graduation. Now Victoria was undoing all of that in front of everyone who mattered to Emma. David's family sat at table 3, his brother and sister who'd stayed in farming, who'd built their own successful operations. They looked uncomfortable, embarrassed for us. His mother, 80 years old and sharp as ever, gripped her cane tighter with each word Victoria spoke. But it was my parents I worried about most. My father, who'd worked construction his whole life to put Victoria and me through college, stared at his plate. My mother had tears in her eyes. They'd always made excuses for Victoria. "She's just driven," they'd say, or "success changes people." If I let this continue, Emma would spend her honeymoon apologizing for us. She'd distance herself from the farm, from the life she actually loved. Marcus's family would always wonder what kind of people we really were, and David, patient, kind David, deserved better than to be dismissed as just a farmer at his only daughter's wedding. Victoria was still talking. "I've prepared something special to help Emma start her new life properly." That's when Tyler practically ran to the microphone. My internal battle raged as Victoria reached for the cream envelope she'd been waving around. Every instinct screamed at me to stand up, to stop this public humiliation. But wouldn't that make me the crazy sister who ruined the wedding? The one who couldn't take a joke? Victoria had perfected the art of plausible deniability, every insult wrapped in concern, every dig disguised as advice. "Before Emma opens my gift," Victoria continued, "I want her to know that success isn't about settling. It's about reaching higher than your circumstances." Your circumstances. As if our life was something to overcome. I thought about the MBA diploma hidden in my home office drawer, the one I'd never hung because Victoria had made me ashamed of what I'd done with it. The job offers I'd turned down to build something meaningful with David. The sustainable agriculture conferences where I spoke about financial planning for small farms, never mentioning them to family because Victoria would mock them. For 20 years, I'd chosen dignity over confrontation. But dignity without boundaries was just doormat behavior dressed up in nice clothes. Emma's best friend was recording the speeches. This would live forever on social media unless I acted. But how could I stop it without becoming the villain? David squeezed my hand 3 times, our old signal for trust me. Tyler was now at Victoria's elbow trying to get her attention. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm sorry, but we need to pause." "In a moment," Victoria dismissed him. "This is important. Emma, sweetie, your mother chose love over success. That's sweet. But you don't have to make the same sacrifice." The word sacrifice hung in the air like a slap. Then Tyler grabbed the microphone. Victoria wrestled the microphone back from Tyler with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Just one more minute, young man. This is family business. She turned back to the crowd, her smile sharp as glass. Where was I? Oh yes, Emma's future. She held up the envelope. Inside this is a check, but more importantly, a letter of introduction to my CEO. Because unlike some people, I believe in opening doors, not closing them. The emphasis on some people while looking directly at me wasn't subtle. You see, Victoria continued, her voice syrupy sweet, not everyone needs to peak at 22 with an MBA they'll never properly use. Emma, darling, you're young. You don't have to follow in your mother's footsteps. You don't have to settle for… She gestured vaguely at the barn, the vineyard, our family's table. This. Marcus's mother audibly gasped. Several phones came out, people were recording. I mean, it's admirable, really. Victoria's tone suggested it was anything but. Rachel found a simple man with simple dreams and decided that was enough. But Emma, you were raised to want more, weren't you? Even if your environment didn't always encourage it. David's brother started to stand, but his wife pulled him down. When I see David, Victoria continued, now fully performing, I see an honest, hard-working man, salt of the earth, as they say, the kind of person who keeps America fed. Important work, truly. Someone has to do it. The condescension dripped like honey from a knife. But Emma, sweetie, you have options, real options. You don't have to limit yourself to farmers' markets and fruit stands. You could live in a real city, work in a real office, make real money. Emma's face had gone from red to white. Marcus held her hand tightly. So here's my gift. Victoria started to open the envelope. Tyler practically shouted into his own microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we have a special announcement. The room erupted in uncomfortable whispers. 200 guests suddenly found their plates, their phones, or the ceiling fascinating, anywhere but the train wreck unfolding at the head table. At the Northwestern alumni table, my former classmates exchanged knowing looks. Dr. Patricia Chen, now a Fortune 500 CFO, shook her head slowly. She'd tried to hire me 3 times over the years, and I'd turned her down each time. I wondered if she finally understood why I'd been reluctant to enter that world. Is she drunk? I heard someone whisper. This is so inappropriate, came another voice. Poor Emma. My cousin Linda was already typing furiously on her phone, probably updating the family group chat that Victoria had removed herself from years ago, claiming she was too busy for constant notifications. But Victoria seemed oblivious to the shifting mood, or maybe she fed on it. Don't look so shocked, everyone. Sometimes truth needs to be spoken, even at celebrations. Especially at celebrations. How else will Emma know she can escape this? That's enough. David's father, William, stood up. At 75, he still commanded a room. Young lady, you're disrespecting my family. Victoria laughed. Your family? With all due respect, Mr. Thompson, your family is exactly what I'm trying to save Emma from. 3 generations of the same thing? Where's the growth? Where's the ambition? Emma was crying now, silent tears streaming down her carefully done makeup. Marcus whispered urgently in her ear, but she shook her head, frozen. My mother stood shakily. Victoria, please, this is neither the time nor… Mom, you've enabled this mediocrity for years, Victoria snapped. Always defending Rachel's choices, pretending it's noble to waste potential. The wedding photographer had stopped taking pictures. The videographer had lowered his camera. Even the catering staff stood frozen in the doorway. Tyler looked desperate. Mr. Harrison is here. But Victoria waved him off, building to her grand finale. So Emma, before you open my gift, promise me, promise us all, that you won't settle for one of the most successful agricultural operations in the Pacific Northwest? The voice boomed from the entrance. If you've ever been in a situation where someone you love has publicly humiliated you, you know the feeling of wanting the ground to swallow you whole. But sometimes, the universe has other plans. I want to know, have you ever had a moment where the truth shut down a bully? Drop a comment below and share your story. And if this story is resonating with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps other people find these stories who might need to hear them. Now, let me tell you what happened next, because this is where everything changed. 15 minutes before Victoria's speech, I'd noticed Tyler frantically checking his iPad, whispering with the catering manager. "The Ritz-Carlton group is running late," I'd overheard. "Mr. Harrison's flight was delayed." I hadn't thought much of it. We had several vendors attending: the florist, the photographer's assistant, the wine supplier from the vineyard. David handled those relationships. I managed the books. But now Tyler was practically bouncing on his feet, gesturing wildly toward the entrance. "Mr. Harrison, perfect timing. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. James Harrison, Vice President of Procurement for the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Group." Victoria's hand froze mid-gesture, the envelope still unopened. "The Ritz-Carlton?" she said into the microphone, then seemed to realize she was still amplified. "What does that have to do with—" A distinguished man in his 60s walked in, followed by two younger executives. Despite their travel-rumpled suits, they commanded immediate attention. "I apologize for the interruption," Mr. Harrison said smoothly, though his eyes were fixed on Victoria with obvious disapproval. "We were delayed, but we couldn't miss celebrating with the Thompson family. After all, partners like them are rare." "Partners?" David stood up, shaking Mr. Harrison's hand warmly. They clearly knew each other well, very well. Victoria's smile flickered. "I'm sorry, did you say partners?" But Tyler was already back at his microphone, relief visible on his young face. "Yes, I've been trying to announce, Thompson Organic Farms has just signed an exclusive contract with the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Group." The room went completely silent. My cousin Linda's phone slipped from her hand, clattering on the floor. Victoria's envelope fluttered to the ground, forgotten. And David, quiet, humble David, picked up his wineglass with soil-stained hands and smiled. I'd missed the signs all week, too focused on Victoria's impending drama to notice David's quiet confidence. The way he'd smiled when Victoria's RSVP came in. "Let her come," he'd said simply. The mysterious phone calls he'd taken in the barn, always ending with, "Yes, the 15th works perfectly." The new suit he'd bought, not rented, for the wedding. "Emma deserves the best," he'd explained, but there'd been something else in his eyes. Even this morning, when I'd fretted about Victoria's surprise, he'd pulled me close and whispered, "Sometimes the best response is success they can't ignore." Now, as Mr. Harrison shook hands with David, I saw my husband differently. This wasn't the fumbling farmer Victoria painted him as. This was a businessman who'd quietly built an empire while she was busy mocking him. His phone buzzed on the table. He showed me the screen. A text from his lawyer. "Contract fully executed. Congratulations on the 2.5 M annual deal. Press release goes out Monday. 2.5 million. Annual." I looked at Victoria, still standing with the microphone hanging limply in her hand. Her company, despite all her boasting, had never landed a contract that size. I knew because she would have made sure everyone knew. "Should we tell them?" David whispered to me. "Tell them what?" He smiled, that rare, full smile that made me fall in love with him 22 years ago. "Everything." Mr. Harrison had reached the microphone. "May I?" he asked Victoria politely. She stepped aside, her face a mask of confusion and growing dread. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Harrison began, "I'm here to celebrate not just Emma's wedding, but a partnership that represents everything we value at Ritz-Carlton. Authenticity, quality, and genuine excellence." Victoria sank into her chair. Before Mr. Harrison could continue, Victoria found her voice. Perhaps it was desperation or just an inability to cede the spotlight, but she stood back up, grabbing Tyler's microphone. "This is lovely, really, but I was in the middle of giving my niece important life advice." Her voice had taken on a sharp edge. "Emma doesn't need to hear about vegetables on her wedding day." "Vegetables?" Mr. Harrison's eyebrows rose. "Madam, Thompson Organic Farms provides exclusive heritage produce to 17 of our properties. Their heirloom tomatoes alone are featured in our Michelin-starred restaurants. Victoria's laugh was hollow. I'm sure that's nice, but Emma has real potential. She doesn't need to waste her life playing in dirt like her father? David's voice cut through the room. He rarely spoke at gatherings, and never to confront. Everyone turned. He stood slowly, his weathered hands flat on the table. The dirt you're so disgusted by, Victoria? It's made us millions. The farm you won't visit? It employs 43 people year-round. The life you think Emma should escape? It's putting her through college debt-free and funded this entire wedding without touching her trust fund. Trust fund? Victoria's face went white. What trust fund? The one I set up when she was 5, David said calmly. Right after we landed our first major contract. You know, back when you were still an intern, telling everyone I'd never amount to anything. The room was so quiet you could hear the vineyard's fountain outside. But please, David continued, his voice steady but firm, continue telling our daughter she should be ashamed of where she comes from. Tell her to be like you, leveraged to the hilt, 3 mortgages on a penthouse, leasing cars you can't afford, all to maintain an image. How dare you? Your husband told me, David said simply. Robert asked for financial advice last month. Seems your company isn't doing as well as your Instagram suggests. Victoria's hands shook. The envelope, her grand gift, lay forgotten on the floor. Emma stood up, her voice small but clear. Aunt Victoria, please stop. The silence that followed was suffocating. 200 guests held their collective breath, witnessing the kind of family drama usually reserved for reality TV. Victoria stood frozen, her designer dress suddenly looking like costume armor that had cracked. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came. For someone who always had a cutting remark ready, the silence was deafening. Marcus's mother, the federal judge, set down her napkin with deliberate precision. The small gesture somehow felt like a gavel falling. Robert, Victoria's husband, had his head in his hands at their table. Their 2 teenagers stared at their phones, probably hoping to disappear. My father struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on his cane. Victoria, he said quietly, but his disappointment echoed through the barn. Your mother and I raised you better than this. She turned to him, desperate. Dad, I was just trying to… To what? Humiliate your sister? Shame your niece? Destroy a wedding? His voice broke. What happened to you, sweetheart? That's when Emma moved. My quiet, people-pleasing daughter walked straight to Victoria and gently took the microphone from her hands. Aunt Victoria, Emma said, her voice stronger now. I'm not ashamed of where I come from. I'm joining the family business because I want to, not because I have to. I have a trust fund that could pay for any life I choose, but I choose this one. She turned to address the room. I choose to work with my hands. I choose to feed people. I choose to build something real, not just a LinkedIn profile. A few guests began to clap, but Emma raised her hand. Wait, she said. There's something else everyone should know. Tyler was already moving, practically running now with his iPad. Ms. Thompson, should I… Emma nodded. Go ahead, Tyler. He cleared his throat, his young voice carrying surprising authority. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, there's one more announcement about Thompson Organic Farms. Tyler's voice rang clear through the barn's sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to announce that this wedding's entire organic menu, every vegetable, every herb, every edible flower, has been provided by Thompson Organic Farms, the exclusive agricultural partner for the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Group's Pacific Northwest properties. He paused, letting that sink in. The heirloom tomatoes in your salad? They're served at 3 Michelin-star restaurants. The microgreens? Flown weekly to properties in San Francisco, Seattle, and Vancouver. The heritage carrots you just enjoyed? They have a 6-month waiting list. Mr. Harrison stepped forward, his presence commanding. If I may add, he said, taking Tyler's microphone with practiced ease, Thompson Organic Farms isn't just a supplier. They're pioneers. David Thompson's sustainable farming methods are being studied by agricultural universities across the country. His soil restoration program has won 3 environmental awards, and his wife Rachel's innovative financial planning model for small farms, it's now taught at Northwestern's business school. Northwestern, my alma mater, the one Victoria said I'd wasted. In fact, Mr. Harrison continued, looking directly at Victoria, we just signed a $2.5 million annual contract with Thompson Farms. That's our largest agricultural partnership in the company's history. We don't partner with simple farmers, Ms. Mitchell. We partner with visionaries. The room erupted. Applause started at Marcus's family table and spread like wildfire. Someone whistled. My former MBA classmate stood up, clapping. Dr. Patricia Chen raised her wineglass to me and mouthed, "Now I understand." David's family, those simple farmers Victoria had dismissed, smiled quietly. They'd known all along. David's mother winked at me, but the final blow came from an unexpected source. "Actually," said a woman at table 12, standing up, "I should introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Walsh from Forbes. I'm here as Marcus's family friend, but I'm also doing a feature on agricultural innovators. Mr. Thompson, we've been trying to reach you for months. Your operation is exactly what we're looking for. Proof that sustainable farming can be more profitable than industrial agriculture." Forbes. The magazine Victoria had been desperately trying to get mentioned in for 5 years. Victoria's legs seemed to give out. She sank into her chair, the cream envelope still on the floor, forgotten and irrelevant. "The contract value is public record," Mr. Harrison added kindly but firmly. "So there's no need for speculation or embellishment. Thompson Farms earned every penny through excellence, not networking parties or PowerPoint presentations." The dig at Victoria's world was subtle but unmistakable. Emma picked up the fallen envelope and handed it back to her aunt. "Thank you for the gift, Aunt Victoria, but I already have everything I need." Victoria's face cycled through emotions like a broken traffic light: red embarrassment, white shock, green nausea. Her perfectly contoured makeup seemed to crack under the weight of her humiliation. I didn't," she stammered, but the words died. What could she say? That she didn't know her dismissed brother-in-law was a millionaire? That she'd been mocking people who out-earned her by millions? Robert finally stood, moving to his wife's side. "We should go," he said quietly. "No." The voice was David's mother, Margaret Thompson. At 80, she rarely spoke at gatherings, but when she did, everyone listened. "Victoria needs to hear this." She stood carefully, her son rushing to steady her. "Young woman, I've watched you belittle my family for 15 years. You called my grandson backward for joining 4-H. You told my granddaughter she'd never matter if she stayed in Oregon. You've acted like money earned in a city is somehow cleaner than money earned from soil." Margaret's voice grew stronger. "My husband built this farm with his bare hands during the Depression. My son modernized it without losing its soul. And Rachel, the woman you say wasted her education, she turned it into an empire. What have you built, Victoria, besides debt and delusions?" The elderly woman's words hit like precisely aimed arrows. Marcus's mother, the federal judge, stood next. "If I may," Judge Harrison said, her voice carrying the authority of countless courtrooms, "I initially had concerns about my son marrying into a farming family. I thought, like you, Ms. Mitchell, that agriculture was somehow lesser. But I've learned something. Authenticity can't be bought or faked. The Thompsons have it, you, madam, do not." The Forbes journalist was typing rapidly on her phone, occasionally lifting it to record. This would be everywhere by Monday. Dr. Patricia Chen, my old classmate, stood up. "Rachel, I need to apologize. I tried to recruit you 3 times, thinking I was saving you from a dead-end life. I see now you were building something I never could, a legacy that feeds people, employs communities, and sustains the land. Victoria, you should be proud of your sister, not patronizing her." Even the catering staff began clapping. Victoria grabbed her purse with shaking hands. her designer heels clicking unsteadily as she stood. Her teenagers were already at the exit, mortified. But as she turned to leave, Emma's voice stopped her. "Aunt Victoria, your check." Emma held up the envelope. "I can't accept this. It comes with too many strings. Besides," she smiled sweetly, "I don't need your money. I never did." The final humiliation. Rejected charity from the niece she'd tried to save. Victoria fled, her husband and children trailing behind. The sound of her Tesla peeling out of the gravel parking lot was audible even inside the barn. That moment, watching Victoria realize she'd been the fool all along, was something I'll never forget. But the story doesn't end there. If you've ever had someone underestimate you only to later discover your true worth, type karma in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story of quiet success. And if you're finding value in this story, please remember to like and share it with someone who needs to hear that success doesn't always look like a corner office or a designer suit. Now, let me tell you what happened 2 weeks later, because that's when Victoria's carefully constructed world came crashing down. After Victoria's dramatic exit, the barn fell silent. 200 guests waited to see how we'd handle this disaster. This was my moment to gloat, to finally unleash 15 years of suppressed comebacks. Instead, I stood up slowly, taking the microphone Tyler offered. "I want to apologize to all of you," I began, my voice steady. "Family drama doesn't belong at a wedding. Emma and Marcus deserve better." "Mom, no," Emma started, but I smiled at her. "But since we're being honest," I continued, "let me share something. Success isn't about what you earn or where you live. It's about being able to sleep peacefully, knowing you've built something real. It's about employees who become family, customers who become friends, and work that feeds people, literally and figuratively." I looked at the Forbes journalist. "Ms. Walsh, if you want a story, here it is. American agriculture isn't dying. It's evolving. And it's being led by people like my husband, who respects tradition while embracing innovation." David stood beside me, his hand finding mine. "We're not perfect," I said. "We've made mistakes, taken risks that didn't pay off, had lean years where we questioned everything. But we've never had to pretend to be something we're not. We've never had to tear others down to feel tall." Mr. Harrison nodded approvingly from his table. "As for my MBA," I smiled, "I use it every day. I've turned a third-generation family farm into a multi-million-dollar sustainable agriculture business. I've created financial models that help small farms survive against corporate agriculture. I've consulted for farms across 3 states. That's not waste, that's purpose." I turned to Emma and Marcus. "This is your day, your beginning. Don't let anyone, family or otherwise, make you feel small for choosing happiness over appearances." Then I did something that surprised even me. "We're also announcing that Thompson Farms will be donating $50,000 to the Oregon Agricultural Scholarship Fund, specifically for students who've been told farming isn't a real career." The applause was deafening, but I wasn't done. "And Victoria," I said, knowing she was probably still in the parking lot, "when you're ready to have a real conversation without the performance, you know where to find us. We'll be in the dirt, building something that matters." Through the barn's open doors, we could still see the parking lot. Victoria's Tesla hadn't left yet. It was stopped at the exit, hazard lights blinking. Robert appeared in the doorway, his face flushed with embarrassment. He walked straight to our table, ignoring the stares of 200 guests. "Rachel, David," he said quietly, "I'm deeply sorry. She's not well. The company is failing. She's been hiding it for months, even from me. The house is being foreclosed. The cars are leased and behind on payments. Everything you saw today, the dress, the bravado, it's all desperation." I felt no satisfaction hearing this, only sadness. "She's been taking anxiety medication," Robert continued. "Drinking too much. The pressure to maintain the image, it's destroying her. And then to find out you've been successful all along, that she's been mocking people who could buy and sell us 10 times over." "Robert, David said gently. She's still family. Family she's treated terribly, Robert replied. I've watched it for years, said nothing. I'm complicit, but seeing her attack Emma at her wedding, his voice broke. That's our niece. What kind of people have we become? Marcus's father, the pediatric surgeon, approached. Robert, if she needs help, real help, I can recommend someone. Burnout and status anxiety are real medical conditions. Robert nodded gratefully. She's in the car, crying. She keeps saying she's ruined everything. And honestly, she has. Our kids won't speak to her. They're mortified. Through the window, we could see Victoria's teenage daughter approaching our table. She looked exactly like Victoria had at that age, before the ambition turned toxic. Aunt Rachel, she said quietly, I'm sorry about Mom. She's not really like this. Or maybe she is, but it's gotten worse since the company started failing. She's been so scared of anyone finding out. Sweetheart, I said, pulling her into a hug, your mom is still my sister. She says things about you, the girl whispered, but I know they're not true. I follow the farm on Instagram. I've seen the awards, the articles. I even wrote a school paper about sustainable agriculture using your model. Victoria's own daughter, secretly admiring what her mother mocked. Robert gathered his children. We're going to go. Emma, Marcus, I'm so sorry. Your wedding is beautiful. Don't let this ruin it. As they walked to the parking lot, Victoria never got out of the car. Through the tinted windows, we could see her hunched over the steering wheel. The Tesla finally pulled away, taking with it 15 years of carefully constructed superiority. 2 weeks after the wedding, I was in my office reviewing contracts when my phone rang. Victoria's name appeared on the screen. I'd been expecting this call. Rachel? Her voice was small, nothing like the commanding tone from the wedding. Can we talk? I set down my pen. I'm listening. She paused, and I heard her take a shaky breath. Technova filed for bankruptcy yesterday. The board fired me last week. They found out I'd been inflating our numbers to investors. I could face charges. I stayed silent, letting her continue. Robert's leaving me. He says he can't watch me destroy myself anymore. The kids are staying with him. They won't even look at me. Her voice cracked. I've lost everything, Rachel. Everything I said mattered. What do you need, Victoria? She sobbed. I need $50,000 just to get through the legal fees, to keep me out of jail. I know I have no right to ask. I know what I've done to you, to David, to Emma. But you're my sister, and I have nowhere else to turn. $50,000, the exact amount we donated to the scholarship fund. I saw the Forbes article, she continued desperately, about your success, the contract with Ritz-Carlton. You can afford it. I'll pay you back, I swear. I'll do anything. I'll work at the farm. I'll apologize publicly. Whatever you want. Victoria, I said carefully, when was the last time you visited Mom and Dad? What? Christmas 2 years ago. Try 3 years. When did you last call Emma just to talk, not to criticize? Silence. When have you ever, in 15 years, said anything positive about our life? I was jealous, she burst out. Is that what you want to hear? I was jealous and petty and cruel. You had everything, real love, purpose, authenticity. I had debt and lies and a husband who stayed for the kids. I attacked you because your happiness made my emptiness unbearable. It was the first honest thing she'd said in years. Please, Rachel, I know I don't deserve mercy, but I'm drowning. I thought about David's words. Success doesn't need to announce itself. I thought about Emma's grace at her wedding. I thought about the scholarship fund, helping kids who'd been told they weren't enough. Victoria, I said finally, I won't give you money. Her sob was audible through the phone. But I will give you something else. I won't give you money, I repeated, but I'll connect you with a financial counselor who specializes in bankruptcy and recovery. Her name is Sarah Chen. We went to Northwestern together. She helps people rebuild after financial crisis, and she does it with dignity. Victoria was quiet, processing this. I'll also give you the contact for a therapist who works with status anxiety and identity crisis. Dr. Morrison helped Emma when your comments were affecting her self-worth. He's excellent. Rachel, I need cash, not... No, Victoria. You need to rebuild your life on something real, not another bailout that lets you avoid consequences. The 50,000 would be gone in 3 months and you'd be right back here. You're punishing me. I'm breaking a cycle, I corrected. Mom and Dad always bailed you out. Every bad investment, every overspend, they covered it. It didn't help you. It enabled you. She was crying now, ugly sobs that reminded me of when we were children and she'd skinned her knee. But I could go to jail. Sarah will help you negotiate with prosecutors. If you're honest about your mistakes, you'll likely get probation and restitution, not jail time. But you have to be honest, Victoria. Completely honest. No more image management. You have millions and you won't help your own sister? I am helping you, just not the way you want. I pulled up Sarah's contact information. Sarah charges on a sliding scale. Dr. Morrison does too. I'll cover those fees. They'll probably total about 5,000 over 6 months. That's my offer. 5,000 in therapy instead of 50,000 to save me? Yes, because therapy might actually save you. The money would just delay the inevitable. David walked into my office, having heard most of the conversation. He nodded supportively. There's one more thing, I added. If you take this offer, you need to apologize to Emma. Really apologize. Not a text, not a card, face to face. And you need to mean it. She'll never forgive me. You might be surprised. Emma has more grace than both of us combined. But that's her choice to make, not yours to assume. Victoria was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, she whispered, "Send me the contacts." Victoria? What? When you're ready, really ready, you're welcome at the farm. Not as a visitor looking down on us, but as family willing to get their hands dirty. She hung up without responding, but for the first time in 15 years, I had hope we might actually be sisters again someday. 6 months have passed since that phone call. Victoria took the help I offered, the real help, not the enabling. Sarah Chen told me Victoria was the most difficult client she'd ever had, but also the most determined once she accepted reality. The therapy with Dr. Morrison uncovered what we'd all suspected. Victoria had built her entire identity on external validation. When that crumbled, she had nothing. But slowly, painfully, she's been rebuilding. She's working now, not as a senior director, but as a marketing consultant for small businesses. Her first client? A family-owned bakery in Portland. She called me crying after her first day, saying, "They were so grateful for my help, actually grateful, not just impressed." Emma met with her last month. I didn't push, didn't arrange it. Emma chose to reach out after Victoria sent a genuine 3-page handwritten apology. They met for coffee, just an hour, but Emma said it was the first real conversation they'd ever had. She asked about my work at the farm, Emma told me afterward. Like, really asked. Wanted to understand our crop rotation, our sustainability practices. She even took notes. The boundaries I set weren't cruel. They were necessary. Love doesn't mean accepting toxic behavior. Family doesn't mean enabling destruction. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone's self-destruction. David and I have expanded the scholarship fund. We now sponsor 5 students annually, specifically those from families where their career choices aren't understood or valued. Each one reminds me that success isn't about the height of your building, but the depth of your roots. Victoria hasn't visited the farm yet. She's not ready, and neither are we. Trust takes time to rebuild, and some wounds need space to heal properly. But she sends Emma agricultural articles now, with notes like, "Thought this might interest you," instead of, "You should do this." Robert didn't leave her, despite his threat. They're in counseling, selling the penthouse, moving to a modest apartment. Their kids are slowly warming back up to her, especially after she admitted her mistakes to them directly. The wedding video went viral. Someone had live streamed the whole confrontation. We got hundreds of messages from people sharing similar stories of family members who confused net worth with self-worth. It started conversations about success, authenticity, and the courage to live unglamorously. But the most important lesson? Sometimes the best response to someone's contempt is simply living well, without apology or explanation. That's where our story stands today. Victoria is learning that respect can't be bought, only earned. She texts me sometimes, not to brag or criticize, but to share small victories, a client's success, a therapy breakthrough, a genuine moment with her kids. Last week, she sent a photo from a farmer's market. "Bought organic tomatoes," she wrote. "Thought of you." It wasn't much, but it was honest. The farm continues to thrive. We're expanding to supply Ritz-Carlton properties nationwide. Emma's working on a sustainable agriculture program for young farmers. David still has dirt under his fingernails, and I still wouldn't have it any other way. Success, I've learned, isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about building something that matters, even if others can't see its value. It's about choosing authenticity over appearance every single time. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe provides a moment of perfect clarity where truth stands up in front of everyone and refuses to be ignored. That moment at Emma's wedding wasn't about revenge. It was about revelation. And in the end, it might have saved my sister's life. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you've ever had to set boundaries with toxic family members, I'd love to hear how you did it. Was I too harsh with Victoria? Not harsh enough? Leave a comment below and let me know. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by someone else's narrow definition of success. What's your definition of real success? I'm genuinely curious to know. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, remember, your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth.